Hello, everybody, and welcome to this community conversation. Tonight, we are having an AAPI town hall. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Ann Kozma, and I'm one of the Educator Innovation Leads on Team Flipgrid. We are so excited that you all are tuning in for this conversation with incredible friends and educators. Our mission at Flipgrid is to empower every person on the planet to share their voice and respect the diverse voices of others. And we believe that together that builds global empathy. Over the past year, there has been an increase in violence and acts of hatred towards members of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And our focus for this town hall is to raise awareness and share perspectives and provide resources to help you all lean in and learn on, to help us lean in and learn on regarding culturally responsive teaching practices and finding ways to honor and celebrate the AAPI community and beyond.
Thank you for being here and thank you for being part of our community. My name is Feli Garcia Lopez, one of the Educator Innovation Leads at Team Flipgrid. I'm so passionate about empowering diverse voices, and I know this conversation and will be an opportunity for us to build awareness so change can happen y juntos podamos crear una diferencia. Together we can make and create change. Thank you for taking the time to be here and learn with us. We're so honored to have some incredible educators and members of Team Flipgrid adding their beautiful, amazing voices to our conversation. We will start with three incredible educators. All of them are history teachers who are passionate about anti-bias and anti-racist education and teaching social justice. After that, my friend, we will welcome two of our awesome, amazing Flipgrid teammates, compañeras de Flipgrid, who are passionate content creators working to empower others as allies. Then we're going to be juntos. We're going to be together and share resources that we can use immediately with our students, with our learning communities. So you ready, Ann?
I'm ready. And friends, I just want to say, as you're joining in this conversation tonight, please share your learning. If you have resources to contribute, we fully believe that we're better together. So I'd invite you to all share the learning, join the conversation if you want to on social using hashtag #FlipGridForAll. But yes, I am ready. Let's welcome in these incredible educators. We're going to pop them up all on the screen and then let them introduce themselves. So Carolee, welcome to the conversation. Hi. Virginia, welcome. And Stacy, we are so glad to have you all here. Hello.
Hello.
Awesome. Carolee, why don't you kick us off? Would you please share a brief introduction and a little bit about yourself?
I am a passionate and friendly 8th grade U.S. history teacher committed to building community in my classroom and bringing history to life by teaching an inclusive and diverse history where students see themselves and others who don't look like them through an empathetic lens so that they develop into engaged, informed, active, and empathetic citizens.
I love that. I know empathy is something that's like your superpower. Welcome, Carolee. We are so glad to have you here. Virginia, would you please share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Virginia Nguyen. I'm Vietnamese American and I teach high school history. I've been teaching for over 15 years and I'm committed to diverse, equitable, and inclusive classroom experiences for my students. I'm so proud to be a teacher because I really believe that as educators, we can change the world.
That's awesome. Thank you, Virginia. We're so glad that you're here. And yeah, as educators, it's like a superpower, believing in the future and our students knowing they have this infinite potential to change the world. I love that. And Stacy, welcome. We are so excited to have you add your voice to this conversation. Would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Ann. I'm Stacy Young. I teach middle school history. I'm also a tech coach and a social justice advocate. I have always believed that integrating technology in the classroom can promote equity, and that has always been a core focus of mine. Additionally, through the study of history, social studies, and civics, I strive to empower my students to be active citizens in their communities and globally.
I love that, Stacy. And knowing that you're challenging folks with their own civic engagement and getting involved, but using their voice It means so much. So Carolee, Virginia, and Stacy, thank you and welcome. We want to start off, again, just by saying thank you for adding your voice to this conversation. We know that you are so passionate, not only as history educators, bringing history and learning to life, in all the different ways that looks like, but also creating space in your classrooms to focus on social justice. And we know there has been this increase in violence and hate speech and rhetoric against people of Asian descent, specifically in this country, especially over the last year. But we want to say and acknowledge, we know there is a lot going on. So thank you for adding your voice to this. And we want to start by asking a conversation about creating safe spaces and what that looks like in your learning communities as you foster critical conversations with your students. So if anybody wants to just jump in and share, we'd love to have you kick the conversation off.
I can get started here. So for myself, I mean, to be able to foster critical conversations, we need to start with a safe classroom environment and really taking the time to get to know my students, to build trust. Because ultimately, we need to trust one another to feel safe and comfortable to have these types of conversations. And I start with that with a really simple tool like Flipgrid. I start my year with asking my students to tell me about them and how to pronounce their names. And I actually keep this moderated. So it's only for my eyes only, so they feel like it's a safe space and they're not worried about, their peers watching them just yet when we don't quite know each other yet. And this is like my opportunity to get to know them initially. And then I continue just building on that. And we use Flipgrid a lot so that we share about one another's identities. We're learning about our classroom makeup and diversity. And then I also use it for lessons where we use it as a discussion board. We model debate procedures through Flipgrid, providing kind of the sentence frames as they're developing this type of articulation and language up to Socratic seminars. And so Flipgrid becomes a safe space for my students to have these important conversations. And over time, we build this kind of trust so that we can have these critical conversations.
That's amazing. Thank you, Stacy.
That's definitely, it all starts with providing a safe environment for our students, right? Where they can feel safe and they can love each other. So I've always told my teachers, and I'll always tell my friends, if your students don't like you, they're not going to learn from you. So we need to establish the relationship and the safe spaces, right? And that mainly helps you lower that student affective filter that happens everywhere, not only when you're adding when you are acquiring a second language, like in my case that I was an ESL teacher, but it happens in every classroom. That affective filter happens everywhere. So when we provide these opportunities for our students to share what they know and to be able to be themselves and to ask the questions that they want to ask and have that confianza with the teacher, that's totally amazing. Thank you so much for doing that for your students and everyone in your learning community. I really appreciate that.
Carolee, Virginia, I'd love to hear from you too about this.
I'm totally with Stacy. Flipgrid is awesome for helping us to create the safe space. I also have them say their names, pronounce it, moderated grid so I can hear it. But sometimes we're not perfect. And so we have to be able to admit mistakes. I had a student who was named after her parents, and she said, and I listened to the Flipgrid and I remembered it wrong because she says her parents' name were Alan and Jamie. So in my mind, I remembered Elaney. But then 30 weeks later, she told me it's Alani. And it's like, so I really did listen to Flipgrid. And so being transparent with the kids, being human, being real, creating that safe space. But I had been creating the space from the beginning. And in remote learning, it's even harder. And so Flipgrid has been a big help for having all those different topics and those discussions. And also just listening to them. In their chat, I open up the chat for the students so they can talk. And it's a risk. Some teachers will not open up the chat in a Zoom. And they'll just control it that they can just DM the teacher. But I make it a place where it's safe, that we're respectful, and it takes training, and students can really express themselves either verbally or in the chat if they want to. And I make a point of trying to get to know each of my students. I listen to Call to Pedagogy, Moments of Genuine Connection podcast before we started remote learning. And I started being really deliberate about making checkoff lists and making sure that I talk to every single student within a matter of a few weeks. And so I've continued this practice, and it's something that I'm going to continue as I return to my physical classroom.
Yeah,
So,
that check-in, whether you're face-to-face, remote, virtual, that personal check-in and connection is the foundation. I know that from my own classroom, but I mean, all of our heads are nodding in agreement. That personal connection, every student is a unique individual, and what they're bringing to the learning community is so valued and so needed in the community. And celebrating the richness of the diversity that's represented in each individual. So, Carolee, I love that. Thank you. Virginia, would love to hear from you on this too.
You know, Stacy and Carolee are such amazing teachers, and I feel so honored to be here with them. And they really highlighted how important it is that we center our students in it. But in centering our students, I want to also talk about how it's important that we are models for safeness, right? So part of it is trusting them. I think it's really important to be vulnerable with our students to foster a safe learning community. That means as an educator, you show and share yourself. Don't be afraid to show that there are things you don't know, right? And have a sense of humor when you make mistakes and embrace learning, right? With a lot of enthusiasm. And I think all of that will translate to how much you care about your students. Stacy and Carolee, for instance, shared like that Flipgrid, how they use Flipgrid for names. And I'm actually really horrible with remembering names. It's just part of my brain that doesn't work as well as other parts. And so I'm like, why didn't I think of that? I can always refer back to it and you really practice my pronunciation. So what I'm doing right now is I'm modeling the fact that I'm still learning myself and I'm evolving. I try to make that a part of my classroom all the time. And I try to do it often and authentically so that my students can see that I'm evolving and and I love to learn and I embrace that I don't know everything. And I take risks. So there's that. I also think it's very important to treat your learners with respect. Give them open-ended questions, not questions that are right or wrong. Hear what they're bringing and what their thoughts are, because we learn so much from each other. And if we have a classroom environment that really encourages that kind of learning from one another, teacher learning from student, we're creating a really safe class. And I think this one's the most important, and this is where I bring in my Vietnamese American identity, is that you try to incorporate so much of your student identity into your class curriculum as you can. If they feel seen and celebrated, they'll feel safe.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, the representation that matters. And I know the three of you just were on with another great friend, Angela Lee, I believe, on the Let's K-12 Better podcast. And you shared this storybook project, this story project you do where you invite students to share their history or a moment from their life that's impacted them. And the phrase that somebody said was, as history teachers, I'm not teaching them history, but I'm giving them the space, the voice, the time to share their history back. And I thought that was so powerful. You all model that in terms of giving your students pathways to share and bring that learning to life in incredible ways. Thank you. I have another question that we're going to roll right into is, what are some of your best practices for anti-biased, anti-racist teaching, and what that might look like for you or your best practices?
I think for myself personally, it took me a long time to kind of gain the courage to learn to speak up and speak out, especially when sharing my own personal experiences as an Asian American woman and educator. That intersectional identity is really complex. And so for much of my life, for much of my career, I felt very invisible or sometimes even stigmatized, facing microaggressions or having others judge me, a lot of times due to the model minority myth and not really seeing me or for my, my expertise or my qualities. And I share this because when I reflect on this, I am mindful and conscious of centering my students' experiences and voices in the classroom. So to me, anti-bias and anti-racist teaching is ensuring that not only do they see themselves, but they see others different from them in the curriculum, in the classroom, and that we're inclusive of everybody, all cultures, all identities, and along with creating safe spaces for discourse and discussion so that they are able to learn how to present and hear varied perspectives and opinions.
Wow. Thank you. I love those insights. Thank you, Stacy. Virginia, Carolee, would you love to I would love it if you would share your insights too.
I love everything everyone says. I love what Stacy says. She gives students opportunities to share. We need to center on students. We need to give them voices. So much time we're busy trying to cover in history, right? History just keeps on going on. We run out of time, but we need them to share their stories. And so we need to be willing to be vulnerable, and we need to be willing to share our stories in our classrooms, but also outside of our classrooms. People don't know what it's like to be a third generation Chinese American woman. And I can share those stories with them. And like Stacy says, we've been talking about a lot that this makes us feel vulnerable, but this is important because if we don't share these stories, you won't know, then you can't do better. And so I model that for my students. When I talk to them and I talk to them about the history of anti-Asian America, I'm like, okay, let me tell you this history, but I don't want to depress you. Let me empower you that I care about you. So I'm speaking up because I want this world to be better for you. So we need to speak up. We need to share about our microaggressions. We need to speak up about our lack of representation that's limited us because we don't want it to limit our students. And we want to show them a world of possibilities. And I'm glad that I can be part of that. AAPI people are not a monolithic group that people often think. It's a group full of diversity, and we need to celebrate that too.
Yeah, I'm so glad you make that point because that's something that I've been learning as I've been listening and trying the whole process of learning and unlearning and all of the conversations that are going on there. It is not a monolith. There is great representation in the AAPI countries literally around the world and the beautiful richness of that diversity. And Carolee, you sharing your own history and bringing that to life is one way that you're making that authentic connection for students to gain perspective and build their own empathy and awareness too. And that, empathy, I know is one of your superpowers, my friend. So Virginia, I'd love to have you add in too, if you would like to.
Ann, thank you so much for sharing the work and your commitment to learning about Asian Americans and our lived experiences. I think that is really key. My own anti-bias, anti-racist work starts with myself. Understanding my own racial identity and my other intersectionalities helps me understand my relationship with the world and the world that exists around me. So, I'm always seeking to listen and learn, and that's what informs my teaching. And that's how I can create a classroom environment that is welcoming for all. As an Asian American woman, there is such a clear connection between us perpetual foreigners, right? Being asked the question of where are you from is an example of that. We're also seen as yellow peril, not welcome. And during this year, we've really seen that how dangerous those stereotypes can play out. So how do we break those stereotypes as a society, and how do we build an inclusive curriculum? We can start by asking ourselves a lot of these questions I'm going to list. So one of the questions is, when you look at your curriculum, who is not represented? Why? Now, if someone is represented or a group is represented, the next question is, how is the group represented in my curriculum? Is it harmful? Right? How do I represent and celebrate all in my curriculum? Right? What are the books that I'm choosing to read with my students, add to my library? What is the history I am teaching? Who are the silent scientists I'm highlighting? Who are the sports heroes I refer to? Those are all ways to ask, those are all questions to ask yourself so that those answers can move you towards an inclusive classroom.
Wow. Yeah, those are powerful questions that should guide us in our best practices as educators and really taking a look at that representation. That's so powerful. Thank you. Well, I want to ask one more question, and maybe we'll, I don't want to speed up the conversation in any way, but I know we have a whole other part that we're still going to get to and then incredible resources to share. But I do want to ask the three of you one more question before we welcome in our next set of guests. How do you ensure that diverse voices are included, represented, and heard as you teach history and bring current events into your own classrooms?
I love this question, Ann. And I just want to build off of what Virginia just said. I mean, examining the curriculum and not just presenting people as victims. A lot of times it's like, let's learn about all the terrible things that happen, but celebrating joy, celebrating power, activism, empowerment, positive role models, and then tying all of this to current events, using history to explain what's happening now. I mean, in my personal example, I never learned about the Chinese Exclusion Act. And that's something that deeply impacted my family's history in California. I had to learn from my own own family. And I also never learned about all these amazing, inspiring Asian American activists and proud moments in my history. Grace Lee Boggs, Larry Itulong, Abraham Chowdhury, Yuri Kochiyama, Patsy Mink, and so many more that are not in our textbooks that, students are growing up never hearing of all these amazing people. And so just really kind of being reflective and examining your curriculum.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yes, totally agree with Stacy. I always agree with Stacy. We need to be intentional about including diverse voices. I didn't hear those voices either. It doesn't mean we get rid of our curriculum, but we need to move away from the single story. The single story isn't necessarily wrong. It's just incomplete. So we need this fuller history in its complexities, in its fullness, and its interesting, and its colorfulness. So we still teach about suffrage, but we can't forget Maple Ping Hua Lee. She's an amazing woman if you haven't learned about her. We need representation matters. Our students need to see themselves. They need to see other people who don't look like them so that they know that America is a colorful place. It's not just monochromatic. And we want them to see the fullness that everyone is in the we and with the people, not just one set of people. And we need to continue to connect these lessons to today. And it's not just the history classroom. Everyone needs this diversity and fullness and representation. And so when we talk about everything, like, well, what did we learn? Like Stacy said, the Chinese Exclusion Act, we're still suffering from those lessons that we haven't figured out from today. We look at marginalization continues. We look at the response to COVID and other things like that is affecting our marginalized people, our communities of color. And that's important for our students to be able to see that and identify it.
Yeah, thank you, Carolee and Stacy. You two are right that this is about bringing in more diverse voices. There's a whole context here. The current events that are coming up are not unique to right now in this moment. They are, sadly, as a history teacher, what do I see? History repeating itself. How do we break that cycle? We break that cycle by changing how we teach. Right? The youth are our future here. That's how we do it. So as we continue to do this, and we are not alone in this. The three of us as educators are part of a wide support network of anti-bias, anti-racist educators out there. We are part of a community. I'm here because I want other educators to feel empowered to join this community. You're not alone in this. So together, know that this is happening all around our country, all around the world. Teachers want to dismantle systems of oppression, not just for Asian Americans. I'm not here for only Asian Americans. I'm here for all marginalized groups. I'm here for my students that are white. I'm here for everybody.
Thank you. The three of your insights are so incredibly powerful. And Carolee, I had heard that in the podcast, your statement of putting we and we the people, and we are a diverse group, talking about how colorful America is. So thank you all. Feli, do you want to add something here?
Yes, it's just our uniqueness is what makes us reach, right? And also the different language that we're able to speak. So because it's about it's different colors, but it's also welcoming the different languages. And not only in our classrooms or the community, but as a nation. And for that reason, we need to change the narrative. We need to show our students the human side of it and that we're also part of it. And we've experienced all of these. And also I wanted to add, Ann, that we need to have these conversations with our students, because sometimes we think that our students are not old enough to have these conversations, or they're not there yet. And I don't think so. We learn from our kids. They're part of our learning community and they have amazing ideas. When I was in the classroom, I was amazed of the conversations that I had with my kids, because I, as the teacher, I did not have all of the answers all of the time. And I will tell them, I might not have the answer for that. I don't know, but together we're gonna learn. And it was beautiful to have those conversations in that type of classroom, of familia, right? Because we were part of a family, and together we were able to see each other, to hear each other, and to respect each other, and to love each other, right? And learn from the different perspectives, from my point of view, from my Mexican American point of view. So thank you for everything that you said, and thank you again for being here. And thank you so much for what you do for your students.
All right, Carolee, Virginia, and Stacy, we're going to go ahead and remove you from this part of the thread. I know you're coming back with incredible resources, so we'll see you in just a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and remove their feeds and welcome in two of our incredible teammates. Feli, you want to kick it off while I add their, yep.
Claro que sí. So we want to welcome to our amazing, beautiful, awesome Flipgrid teammates to the conversation. These two ladies and are not only creative, but both of them are passionate about helping others learn more and become allies. Por favor, Ann, if we can add them.
All right, welcome, Sophia. Hello, and Celine, welcome. Hello, hello. Awesome. So, Celine, would you go ahead and please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Celine. So glad to be here. So it's actually my second month at Flipgrid. I'm a PM for Flipgrid, and I just love the energy for the team. And for myself, I'm originally from China. I came to US 6 years ago to pursue my degree here and also working here. And I'm a big advocate of intercultural communication and also a big supporter for diversity and inclusion. I remember one of my proudest moments was to work with my friends, and we are able to launch the first ever Asian festival event in the most iconic place at Detroit. I still vividly remember these 5,000 people, how colorful they are, how diverse the group are. So I look forward to do it again with all your support.
That's so awesome. Thank you, friend. We're so glad that you're here. And Sophia, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'd love for you to have you share a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sophia, also a PM on Flipgrid on the camera. I also run a podcast called Bamboo and Glass. It's a space where me and my best friend, another Asian American woman, we talk about our lifelong journey of learning and unlearning. Very fitting for this. And so I'm excited to talk about what I do as a podcaster in creating safe spaces for vulnerable conversation. And what are some takeaways that could apply to the classroom, or even to the workplace. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. We're glad you both are here. So Feli's going to run these questions, and I'm going to go ahead and pop up the first one to get us started.
Gracias, Ann. We've been lucky to get to share in some incredible conversations about race, equity, and justice as a team, as a Flipgrid team, right? We share powerful book club conversations, right? And are continuing on learning. So we wanted to ask you our first question. How do you continue to learn and unlearn in your own journey?
Yeah, so that's something that I do with my podcast. And one thing that we really focus on in building a comfortable conversation is showing our guests that we build trust by showing that consent is ongoing and they can opt out of sharing a part of their story that they don't feel comfortable sharing. So we do a lot of prep work for our episodes. We co-plan the episode with them. We send them a list of questions, have them review it, and delete any questions they don't want us to ask. During the episode, we tell them anything you don't want to share, just tell us, we'll go on to the next question. And then when the episode ends, we tell them, hey, let us know if there's anything that you don't want us to air. And also when we phrase our questions, we're careful to avoid assumptions. Like we wouldn't ask, hey, what was it like when your parents didn't let you pursue the arts? Instead, we'd ask something more open-ended, like Virginia suggested, of like, what kinds of career paths did your parents support? And so this idea of inviting consent and inviting people to opt into sharing their thoughts can apply to the classroom. You at this time, you may want to ask your Asian students to share what their experience has been like. But this is kind of a really scary time for a lot of Asian folks. And so just make it easy for them to opt out or to maybe share anonymously and find paths where they feel comfortable sharing. Something else that I'm doing is focusing a lot on intersectionality, which enables us to share both nuance and also make the story relatable to a wider range of people. So one of my favorite episodes is called How Dance Saved His Life. It's about one of our friends who is a queer 24-year-old man. He is a 1.5 generation Vietnamese American, and he grew up in a Catholic home. And his story is all about, growing up in his immigrant family, being in this really religious environment and knowing that he was queer and feeling like that made him less masculine. And, he had turned to substances to really compensate for that lack of masculinity that he felt. And the isolation and the lack of resources for mental health was something that was kind of unique to him because of his intersection of identities, but also something that people of any of the identities that he had could really relate to. So I think sharing intersectionality is so powerful because it highlights that nuance, but also no matter what identity you have, you can then relate to some part of his story and then be an entry point to understanding more points of his story. And so one way you can think about this in the classroom is, when I reflect on as a student, what I wish I was asked in the classroom was something like, what assumptions do you think your classmates have about you based on your visible identities, like your race, your gender, your cultural heritage, and also your less visible identities, like your ability or disability, your immigration status, and what assumptions do you think they have, and what do you wish they knew about you? And this is a question I wished my teachers had asked because I have so much to say about this, and I think it would have opened up really powerful conversation. So those are two things that I've learned in podcasting and how I think they could apply in your classroom.
That's powerful to think about the unasked questions too, about where do you, wow, my mind is like reeling right now, but where do you see yourself? The example that you shared about your friend, but the assumptions that somebody makes based on visible anything, and what do you wish you would know about me? That is powerful. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
And the conversations that you can have with your students, because I love the fact that you brought up like bringing stories to the classroom, right? Like different perspectives. We go back to the different perspectives and how we show and we offer opportunities for our students to think outside the box, right? Think from different perspectives and understand and appreciate other points of view, right? Which is all about communities in the classroom, right? And the love for reading, but the love for loving each other and creating a family, no matter what language you speak or the way you look, right? I remember I will always tell my kids, no juzgues al libro por la portada. Do not judge the book by its cover. We need to learn about the book. It's exactly the same thing with people. We need to learn about people. That's the reason why we have 2 ears, boys and girls, because we need to listen more. And that's the reason why we only have one mouth, because we need to speak less and appreciate that, right?
Jeline, we'd love to hear from you about your own journey or what you've discovered about the process of learning and unlearning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I would like to take a recent example. So with the increasing violence against the Asian community, internally, I'm part of the Microsoft Asian ERG. And what we are hoping is to not just bring the awareness for our own community, but also bring allies. So what we do was to start sharing our own story, create a very powerful AAPI storybook, show our vulnerability, and like share with others to bring the awareness. So I think the first step is to start from you, like start sharing. And even as an ally, you can share your journey, how you support other ethnicity. So that is very powerful. That if we could start with sharing to bring the awareness. And second thing is, like we can support each other by just asking your Asian friend or any of your like friends, like how are you feeling today, right? Particularly in this like very challenging time, like just ask them how they're doing. It's a powerful thing to do. And last but not least, we can start by educating ourselves, and we can educate others as well. So it's all come together about how we can be a better ally in this journey.
Those are great insights. Thank you, friend. And I think sometimes people might be afraid to ask that question, how are you doing? But there's a lot going on, and coming back to checking in with people is a powerful way to connect, to learn, but educating ourselves is critical to moving forward, right?
Definitely. It's sharing our personal experiences that makes us more human, right? And it's so important for us to share the stories with our community and with our students. So thank you so much. The next question, we're gonna start with Sophia. You talk about your podcast, Bamboo and Glass. And the question, my friend, is here: how can people learn more about underrepresented perspectives?
I think during this time, there are so many news outlets that are highlighting the perspectives of celebrities, like actors, athletes, etc. But there is so much power in the stories of everyday people. So I would encourage you to, if you come across a podcast where, you don't recognize the guests who are featured, don't just think, oh, there's nothing valuable for them to share. There are a lot of people doing grassroots work that you might not recognize their name, but they are so knowledgeable. And to not discount the people who are not celebrities. If you are looking for particular podcasts, you can check out the Instagram page for my podcast, Bamboo and Glass, and we follow a lot of podcasts. So there's so many to choose from. And later we'll be sharing some resources that has a whole list of articles and podcasts and authors who you can be learning from.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And a podcast is just like a book, right? It's about stories. You're also sharing stories, so you're also learning. And again, from the ESL perspective, from the teacher, you're practicing, you're listening, and your comprehension skills. So thank you so much for that. Now, my friend Celine, hate comes from a lack of knowing, right? Awareness brings empathy, and that's how change begins. Como empieza el cambio. You share incredible resources with our team by sharing perspectives from the Asian American Pacific Islander community. So our question for you, mi corazón, how can we raise awareness and work together to bring change?
Yeah, I love this question. And just try to reiterate what I just said, like raising awareness start from ourselves. Like this is also my aha moment, that when I realized, wow, it's just so powerful to share your own story, like put your story on the AAPI book to make sure, okay, people know about it, to try to kind of eliminate the assumption by sharing your story, no matter it's good story or some tragedies, not necessarily have to be, like negative stories, but sometimes can also be positive story that people can celebrate your wins as well. So I think that is a powerful moment that we just start with sharing what we know about this community and also share our own story. And then we can gather those resources. So nowadays we see there are a lot of resources on social media, but that's this is a great starting point. But we can build on this momentum by really learn the Asian history to really bring that awareness to a new level, that we can actually educate our students, our next generation, to bring along them together when we are all learning this together. So that would be my few tips.
It's a beautiful journey in lifelong learning, right? And the opportunity to connect and increase your own awareness, whether it's new friends, whether it's a shared experience, whether it's hearing somebody's story, the power of story. I think that's something we all know, because it resonates and links directly back to an individual sharing their voice. And when we say your voice matters, we mean it. And every voice is magic, and every voice has this beautiful infinite potential to share, to teach, to inspire, to change, to advocate. Like, oh, I love this. Goodness gracious, friends. Okay, so we're going to bring everybody back on. This has been such a powerful conversation, but I want to bring everybody back on camera because we want to talk about allyship. And I would love for you all to share your perspective on what it does mean to be an ally. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'll share the question one more time. How can folks be an ally to the AAPI community, or just as we explore allyship in general? I'd love your perspectives on this question.
Well, I can get started here with, just simply learning, listening, and if you're an educator, teaching about it. And so many of you watching right now, thank you so much. This is like one step. And there's just so many resources shared out there already. But in addition to that, we do have a few very specific things that I think Anne will share in the comments or in our blog post after this. But we have some curated Wakelet resources on learning about the AAPI experience, but also for the educators out there, how to teach it with some sample lessons and lesson plans. Another great starting point is the PBS documentary series, Asian Americans, but don't stop there. There are so many more stories and experiences to be told of Asian American history and experience beyond just these.
Thank you, Stacy.
And empower the AAPI community. Like we talked about, sharing representation matters. I've been getting a lot of guest speakers for my classrooms. And so if someone's doing something like that, as a teacher, don't go like, hey, you're messing up my schedule. Think about, hey, how can I support you? Can I come attend? I had Simon Tam, who was the founder of the Slants. He's an American, is an American dance rock band. And he wanted to name his band the Slants, and the trademark office said you can't because it's disparaging to Asians. But they let everyone else who wasn't Asian use the Slants for their trademarks. And so his case, awesome opportunity for my students to learn from someone cool who looks like them. That's an awesome way to empower them. And so, be an ally, support your colleagues who are doing these things, support your students by providing these opportunities for them to see themselves and others who don't look like them. I just taught in Kansas yesterday to my friend's Nate's class. And so it's predominantly white class. But they're fighting against changing the name of their school. And I was there to say, hey, I went to your school board meeting virtually. I heard you and I think you're amazing. And let me tell you about my family story. So the more we can talk and push those four walls off of our classroom and share stories and get to know each other empathetically, what a wonderful world this would be.
Thank you so much, Carolee and Stacy, for starting us off. I want to add to that and say, thank you to Flipgrid. You are empowering us as Asian Americans here, giving us this platform to share our story. I have said this earlier that I'm all about committing to learning and reflecting myself. Yeah. And so we have to keep in mind that we're here to try to undo lifetimes of discriminatory and racist understandings of the world. Okay, that's going to take time, constant reflection, and commitment. Stacy and I are avid readers, and on our Wakelet, you'll find book lists to get you started on your journey. The author of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire, he teaches us that education is used as a tool for critical awakening and shared humanity. And in it, he has this really powerful quote, "No one can be authentically human while he prevents others from being so." So as we think about that, I want us to think about how our goal here is to change our worldview, right? We have to see and live in a world in which we're all equitable and inclusive. All people have the right to feel safe and be celebrated. So I know that right now the hashtag is Stop AAPI Hate. I and all of us want to change it to hashtag Celebrate AAPI, but not just celebrate AAPI. I'm talking about celebrate all groups as much as we can.
Thank you, Virginia.
Yeah. Virginia, I wanted to build on what you said about that hashtag of Stop AAPI Hate. Something that I think is limiting or maybe even misleading about the word hate is that it really brings the attention to feelings and to kind of individual acts between people. And something I am reflecting a lot on is when I see something awful that happens, it's a reminder to think about the broader systems that enable this behavior. So for example, I was recently reading the story of an undocumented Asian American not being able to pursue medical treatment and just being afraid to pursue the help that they need because they don't have the status that they think they need to get that help. And you could view that as like, oh, that's so sad. Or you could also, and you can, in addition, think about, what are the systems that are enabling this fear, right? Like, how does the medical system work? What are the ways that the immigration detention system is set up to make it so difficult for this person to receive the help that they need? So yeah, that's something that I've been learning a lot is thinking not just about individual acts of hate that we're seeing, but also how systems are set up, which is something that isn't critiqued as much, but is also super a very powerful determinant of Asian folks' experience in the U.S.
Yeah, now all the panelists' viewpoint. Yeah, I want to just add one more point. So since this is a systematic problem. We need a systematic approach. So rather than just sharing some like tragic moment, but also celebrate some amazing success. Like even sometimes we turn tragedy into a kind of celebration. For example, the recent the elderly Asian woman got hit, but instead she used all the like money raised for her to bring it back to the AAPI community. That is such a wonderful story that she literally turned it in from a tragedy to be a celebration moment that we should all acknowledge that how powerful this community is.
Wow, those are great insights. I like processing like all of this, and I'm already ready to dig in and re-listen to this to kind of challenge myself to continue to learn and grow. One of the things that I have found so helpful in my own process is exploring resources. And I know I referenced, I recently listened to Carolee, Virginia, and Stacy on the Let's K-12 Better podcast with our awesome friend, Amber Coleman-Mortley, Mom of All Capes. But you shared incredible resources on there. And this is the part of the conversation where we're just going to start sharing all these resources with the community. So I have my screen ready to share, and I have like 10 tabs open. So friends who are tuning in, feel free to screenshot. We will be sharing these resources after the conversation as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add my page to the screen. Did I say that correctly? Add my screen to the page. I think I said it backwards. This is the website that has become very popular. I know you just talked about shifting the narrative and removing that word hate and talking about celebrating and joy. And there's so much beauty in that. Folks can, however, use stopaapihate.org as a powerful resource, not only to report hate incidents, find the latest news. I know this big report was released on the day this tragedy happened in Georgia. There is so much information on here. If folks are looking for it, definitely check out stopaapihate.org. We all have resources to share simply because of the order of the tabs. I'm going to share this one first. I started listening to this podcast last December, and it has been so insightful. My friend Ted back at home in California, him and his daughter are putting on this incredible podcast, Asian American History 101. I mean, everything exploring the model minority myth, talking about celebrations. They are talking about the AAPI community is not a monolith. They're bringing in rich, diverse conversations and people groups from countries, so many countries represented, you know, the beautiful diversity of Asia and beyond. I have learned so much from this. And so I definitely would encourage folks to listen and check out the Asian American History 101 podcast. Feli, I know you have a resource that you want to share, and I've popped up the PDF that folks can use.
Thank you so much. This right here is Teaching Tolerance 4 Steps for Speaking Up Against Bias, and it's a pocket guide. And this guide is for educators who want to develop the skills to speak up for themselves and who want to help their students find the courage to speak up too, right? And I love this guide because it's about giving our students the tools, right? And language opportunities to practice and share what they think. I strongly believe that every student has a story to say, to be told, and that needs and should be and has to be celebrated. Yeah. And something that I want to add really quick on right here is that also this guide helps us help other educators, help other teachers, because some other teachers want to have the conversations, but maybe they don't know how to. So it's just having those opportunities for our students to share their stories, but also thinking about our colleagues, right? Other teachers within our community that maybe don't know how to start the conversations. So this guide is step one, something quick, a PDF that you can share with your communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Feli. Okay, I have to call out Virginia and Stacy. Your Educate to Empower Linktree is full of resources. So I'm not sure. I think, Virginia, you're going to talk about the Linktree, right?
Sure, I'm happy to. So what we have here is, first of all, Stacy and I use our Asian American experience right now because we had to focus on it because it's needed right at this moment. But what we have on our link tree is more than that. It is all the ways in which that we have shared resources across with other educators on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But there are a lot of resources right now focused on how to stop AAPI hate and what educators can do. We have lesson plans that we've created, curriculum out there. We have Wakelets with resources that for educators and others, parents, whomever, to take a look at. It looks like our Wakelet is loading right now. We have, so if you scroll down, you'll see that we have resources for educators to learn. We have resources for educators to build an anti-racist classroom, to learn about the AAPI lived experiences and history, teaching resources for AAPI, the book, our current reads and our recommended reads and what we're going to read. So we're curating resources for educators who want to join us or who are already there and just want more support. Again, it really falls into our philosophy that educators have the power to change the world.
Incredible. So many great resources. Thank you. Thank you. Sophia, you shared this with me and I was blown away. This is another incredible resource. I'd love to have you talk about it.
Yeah, so this resource really came out of the understanding that people have different preferences for what kind of media they consume and how much time they have and what types of topics they're interested in. So this really sorts all of these resources by those types of categories. So if you go to the books tab, you'll see that it includes books and it shares the identity and the background of the author, the category and the topic, the level, do you know a lot about Asian American history? Do you know very little? And also the length of the book, so you can decide if this book is the right kind of amount for you to be reading. And there are so many other resources too. There are films, there are articles, podcasts, orgs to support. This is just a really well cataloged and sorted resource.
I love this. Thank you so much. This is powerful. And again, folks, we are going to be dropping the links to all of these resources, not only in the chat. Yeah, this is an incredible spreadsheet. Thank you. This was brought up while you all were on the podcast. Somebody referenced it early. I'd love, Stacy, I think you're the one sharing about this.
Right. I think right now it's still streaming for free, or you just have to make sure you're signed into your local PBS station to watch it. It's a mini part series. But what's so great about it for educators, they have lesson plans. And so there's segments. They even took the whole documentary and snipped into little segments that you can use in the classroom with lessons that Carolee worked on. And so this is just such a wealth of information. And this is also recently made. And so educators definitely take a look at those lesson plans there. They're very easily adaptable for classrooms.
Phenomenal. Thank you. And I think we have to call out the Flipgrid Discovery Library. And Carolee, I know you have shared personal accounts inside of Discovery Library in partnership with California State Parks. And this example that I have open is a topic that you created for them, sharing your personal family history. I'd love it if you shared a little bit about that with the listeners.
So I'm a third generation Chinese American, and my grandfather, when I was growing up, I didn't it's Gong Gong's birthday. How old is he? Do you want to know his paper age, his real age, or his Chinese age? And then why does my Gong Gong have two different names? And so I found out, not till I was an adult, I didn't learn this in school. I learned this on my own. My grandfather was a paper son. So Chinese were the first race of people to be excluded from America. There was no way to get in unless you were part of the exempt class. And so he came in as the third son of a merchant. And so this is one of the pages of his interrogation papers. But the interrogation papers just go on and on. I ask my student the questions like, what's your closest grocery store? who are your neighbors to the west? What are their names, their ages, and their occupations? And they're like, we don't know them. And it's like, exactly. But these are the things, unlike Ellis Island that was welcoming the gateway to the to America, Angel Island was a gatekeeper. They were trying to keep the Chinese out. We were guilty until proven you can be welcome, you can come into our country. So it's a real story. I love California State Parks, so I take my students to Angel Island every year virtually. That's another, to see the places where history took place. That's another incredible thing to be able to do. So I'm blessed to be able to share this story, and just, it makes me even more in awe of my grandparents all the time, of them coming into the country and being this courageous to go through all of this.
Yeah, wow. I know you have another resource, I believe, that you were going to speak about.
So yeah, Composer is a really great tool, and they curate resources and lesson plans and everything like that. So after the shooting, they put together this incredible list, just helping people to understand bias, Asian American history, tools, injustice, everything together. And everyone can join Composer. It's a nonprofit. They can set up an account, and they can get social justice lesson plans and everything that they need curated for them.
Wow, that's incredible. And then this one too, you referenced this. I'd love for you to share about this.
I think I had more than my share of shares. So
that's okay.
This was a game changer. So I listened to this before we went to remote learning, and to be deliberate about keeping a list of students. Like I don't like doing that, but I had understood this. We have to have these genuine moments of connection. It doesn't have to be an hour discussion. It could just be a check-in. And so I started keeping a checklist and checking in with the students on a regular basis. And that's been a real game changer in setting up community, even in a remote environment.
I love it. I know this is just like an open call. Did anybody have any other ones that are top of mind, or just a great place to visit? Because I have one more if we need one more.
So this isn't a place to visit, but this is, a lot of us have access to it, which is our students. You know, I want to highlight how much our students are resources and sharing their own experiences and background. So, you know, give them space to invite you into their identity, and give them space to share what it is about them and what their rich family experiences in history. It could start with food. I think food is like a universal love language. You can start there by asking the history of the food or their favorite family meal that they celebrate. So I don't want to miss out on that chance to say our students are resources too.
Virginia, I think that's it, right? The incredible infinite potential of every person's voice and what they bring to the conversation. I love hearing not only from Flipgrid teammates, Zelene and Sophia, thank you. Virginia, Stacy, Carolee, thank you. As history educators, bringing the untold stories, or the stories that are left out, along with real life, into those learning moments, and honoring the unique individuals, the beautiful richness of diversity represented in your classrooms, and giving their voices space, and giving their voices the chance to share, right? You just made a super powerful point, Virginia, about our students being incredible resources. Friends, I have to share this. I'm so passionate about this, and it makes me so excited knowing there are infinite possibilities for conversation. So definitely feel free to check out the Flipgrid Discovery Library. We have incredible partners. I want to call out specifically, if you're looking to have conversations about race, equity, and justice in your classroom, we have a curated list there. We referenced California State Parks. You can find all of these in the partner pages, Anti-Defamation League EDU. Amplifier is this awesome, using, visual graphics to spur conversations. I wanted to call out California State Parks, the Equal Justice Initiative. I can help. Goodness gracious, KQED just launched a really incredible youth media challenge. They have a topic called perspectives. And Virginia, that reminds me exactly what you just said about students. Ask your students their perspective. Give them that space. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this, because I just have to call out all of you and say thank you so much for adding to this conversation. I know we've gone a little bit long, but I wouldn't have wanted to rush it. And all of you have shared incredible insights. That was our goal, is to help share perspective and increase the opportunity for people to learn, because we are lifelong learners on a journey. And I know something we all believe wholeheartedly is we're better together. So I personally want to say on behalf of Team Flipgrid, thank you for adding your voice to this conversation. Friends who have tuned in, thank you for listening. Sally, anything else you want to say?
Once again, thank you for being here with us and sharing your experiences, your heart, su corazón, for all of us, your experiences, everything, all the resources that you share for every educator on the planet, because it's not only here in the US, but you're making an impact in the entire planet. So thank you so much for that. I know that together we can make a difference and celebrate the entire AAPI community and the rest of the world. Muchísimas gracias por todo lo que hace.
All right, friends, thank you for joining in. And unless anybody has any final thought they want to say. Awesome. Thank you again. Thank you. We'll see you out there, everybody. Stay safe.
Gracias. Thank you. Gracias.